Hi, my name is Dawn, and I'm a First Tech Challenge coach from Colorado. Last year was our rookie season. I represent Team 14659 from Compass Community Collaborative School. Since over the rookie season, we learned a lot about building a basic robot and just how to set it up in the different programming modes. We wanted to pass that knowledge on to you. What do you do when you get that box of parts and you need to put together your first robot? So this tutorial will cover some of the basic robot components in your kit, how to set them up, how to program them using OnBot Java, and then the two different modes, autonomous and driver controlled. So let's get started. So your box of parts may look overwhelming, but you can pull out a few important pieces just to start setting up your first basic robot. You're going to need a couple of motors to be your drive wheels. So I've got the Tetrix Tornado motors. Make sure you have cables for power and also the encoder cables. And look for the adapters so you can plug these cables into the robotics hub. In addition to the two motors with their cables, you're also going to need motor mounts, and you'll need a screwdriver along with the long machine screws to connect the motor mounts to the robot frame. You will want to get a servo motor for this example. Servo motors are useful for arms, claws, grabbers, anything that you might need to have 180 degrees of motion, so it can go up and down, but not full 360 degrees. In addition to those moving parts, you'll need enough metal parts to just build a basic frame. I've just made a really quick prototype frame that has a basket behind it to drag the rest of the parts. Get your Rev Robotics expansion hub. Make sure you have a battery and also a switch with the pigtails attached to connect it to the battery and the hub. And then you'll need your two phones, your gamepad, and all of the USB adapters needed to connect those. Now I want to make a couple of notes about installing the motors before we get into the coding. When you install the motors into the motor mount, notice that the axle isn't completely in the center of the motor. This is done purposefully. It allows you to make micro adjustments to the height just by rotating this motor. This can be really helpful if you're trying to get gears to mesh perfectly. I'm going to make sure my axle is all the way at the bottom of the motor mount to give myself as much height as I can get. Once I have the motor installed in the motor mount, I can attach the wheel to it. The wheel hub has a screw on one side, and I want to make sure that screw is lined up with the flat surface of the axle. So that'll lock it down nice and tight so that the wheel doesn't come loose. So we'll just slide the wheel onto the axle and then tighten that screw on the wheel hub using your small hex key. Make sure that the screw is lined up with the flat side of the axle. Okay, we have a basic prototype robot built. Again, this is just a really rough robot. It's not meant to be competition ready at all, but just to show how to program motors and servos to do what they can do in the different modes. You want to make sure that your servo has enough degrees of freedom to be able to do the task you want it to do. In my case, I just want to be able to demo the servo with the arm up and then the servo with the arm down, and I can tell I've got enough freedom of motion to be able to do that. So I should be good to go. I've got my power cables and encoder cables hooked up to the motors, and then a cable here for the servo, and then here's my switch with the pigtails attached. So to start hooking everything up, this is what we do. This will be the front of my robot. I'm going to take the left motor's cables, left motor power and left motor encoder, and those are going to get plugged into slot 0 for motor on the expansion hub. So let's take the red power switch. It only connects one way, so you can't screw it up, and the encoder cable. So I'm going to remember the left motor is in slot 0. The right motor will go in slot 1. So again, power cable and also encoder. And they can only attach one way, so if you attach it backwards, it just won't connect, and this is a very positive thing. Perfect. The servos get attached to a different spot than motors. You can see servos attach at the bottom of the expansion hub where it says servo. And there's a key to how the cable should be attached. There's a black, a red, and then the signal wire. In our case, the signal wire is yellow, but sometimes you'll see that it's white. So just make sure that the black wire is on the far left, according to the key. And I'm going to plug our only servo into slot 0. It doesn't have to be in slot 0, but it's recommended that you follow the numbering scheme going from lowest to highest. With those attached, now it's time to make sure we have power connected. So we're going to take our charged battery and we're going to wire the battery through the switch to the expansion hub. So first we'll connect the switch's pigtail to the expansion hub where it says battery. And then we'll connect the other side of the switch's pigtail to the battery itself. And again, it can only connect one way, so it's a very positive thing. And I'm just going to load all my electrical components in the basket so they can be carried by the robot. Currently my switch is turned off, and that's how I want it. The last part that needs to be connected to the robot itself is the phone. So this is our Moto E4 phone. And before we hook it up, we need to learn how to set up the software on the phones, so that's the next step. Okay, so the next step is to configure the phones to work with the robot. I have a couple of Motorola E4 phones. You can use any First Tech Challenge approved phone. So when you first get your phones out of the box, you will need to connect them to some local Wi-Fi. So find your local Wi-Fi router and connect them to that. And you need to download an app on each phone. One of your phones will be the robot controller. So go to the Google Play Store and look for the FTC Robot Controller app. The other one will be the driver station. So go to the Google Play Store and get the FTC Driver Station app. So one gets robot controller, one gets driver station. You should also make sure that you label each phone with what it is. Let's start with the robot controller. So I'll tap on the app to open it. Once it's opened, one of the things you'll need to do is give it a name. So you click on the menu in the top right, and you're going to choose Settings. There's an option here that says Robot Controller Name. The naming convention is you put in your team's number -RC. We're going to do the same thing on the driver station. Open the driver station app, choose the menu, choose Settings, and then you'll go to the driver station name. And make sure again you have the team number followed by a dash and then DS for driver station. So once you've got that all set, you're ready to pair your driver station with the robot controller. You'll click Pair with Robot Controller, and then after you give it a minute, you should see your robot controller show up in the menu and you can select it. When you're selecting a new robot controller, you'll get a positive beep when they've connected to each other. So this part's done, we can go back. I'm not going to do it at this time, but at some point you'll also need to disconnect these from your local Wi-Fi. If they're connected to your local Wi-Fi when you're in competition, you can get disqualified. It's illegal to be connected to Wi-Fi when you're in competition. So next we need to configure our robotics hub to work with the robot controller. So we'll go back up in that menu, and this time we're going to choose Configure Robot. So we have no configurations right now, so we need to add a configuration. You're going to tap on the New button. And so it suggests that we go ahead and scan. So let's go ahead and connect this to the robotics hub. We're going to use the USB micro adapter and then the USB mini adapter to connect this to the Rev Robotics hub. So connect those two together, and then you'll connect the micro end into your phone, and the mini end will be connected to the robotics hub. You've got the micro plugged into the phone. Now plug the mini end into the robotics hub, and notice that the light starts blinking orange. It's getting power from the phone, but this is not enough power to actually run the robot because we have the power switch turned off right now. So we've connected the USB micro into the phone to the adapter, and then connected the USB mini to the robotics hub. The robotics hub is powered on, and then once we hit scan, it may take a few tries of plugging and unplugging, but it found Expansion Hub Portal 1. So we go ahead and tap on that. Inside it says Expansion Hub 2. This does not mean that we have 2 expansion hubs. It means that the address of this expansion hub is address number 2. This is the default that comes from the factory settings. Tap on Expansion Hub 2. Inside Expansion Hub 2, you can see all the possible bits of hardware that we can attach to the expansion hub. So we'll start with the motors and just configure the 2 motors that we have. We currently have a motor connect to port 0, so I'll pull down the menu and choose my motor. The one that I have is a Tetrix motor. And then I'm going to enter its name. Since this is my left motor, I'm going to name it left. We're going to do the same thing with motor port number 1. I'll pull down the menu and choose Tetrix motor. And then I'm going to enter its name. This one will be right. That's enough for the motors, so we can make sure we save what we have so far. Done. Next, let's go to the servos. You can see servos right there. We have one servo connected to port 0, so I'll pull down the menu. And our servo is just a plain servo. And for its name, this is my robotic arm, but I'm going to be a little cheeky and call it claw. There's no other servos attached, so we're done. That's all the devices that are attached to this robotics hub right now, so we can click done. We'll click done until we get out completely, click save, and it's going to ask you for a name for this robot configuration. So just give it a name so you can remember this configuration for later. I will name this robot Simple. Your robotics hub is all configured, so the next step is to start programming. The way we start programming this is we're going to go activate our current configuration. We're going to use the back arrow to go back to the main screen, and now we're ready. My screen just dimmed on me. Let's see if I can get it to brighten up again. There we go. Now we're ready to program it. So I tap on this upper right corner one more time, and I'm going to choose Program and Manage. The next scene you'll see is from a laptop. So what we do in the laptop is we're going to take a laptop computer. I recommend a Windows or Mac computer. It's uncertain if Chromebooks are going to work reliably. And on that computer, disconnect it from its home Wi-Fi, and you're going to search for networks and look for this Wi-Fi network, Direct 1S, your team number, and then RC. When you find that Wi-Fi network, type in that password. It should connect, and it also should tell you that you don't have internet access. When you've done that, you're going to open up a browser. I recommend using Chrome, and in the address bar, you type in this IP address. Typing in that IP address will take you to the programming interface, and I'll show you that in the next screen.